Like the Commissioner.
Yes. Okay. So looking at London Fire Brigade's future priorities. So I touched on some of these in my opening remarks, and I want to highlight that obviously one of the main priorities for next year will be continued support in the Grenfell Tower inquiry and the police investigation. We learn from every incident we attend, and immediately after the Grenfell Tower fire, I committed the resources so that we could learn everything possible from the fire and improve the safety of London in the future. My office has continued to work on the internal safety and learning review, and acting on that will be my top priority. As I said in my evidence to the inquiry, one example is the quality of the operational risk information recorded for Grenfell Tower, and at the time of the fire that fell below the standards expected of the fire brigade, and we have a project in place to improve this and upskill our fire station staff, not only with increased fire safety regulation knowledge, but they can use this so they can carry out fire safety checks while also carrying out other visits such as our premises risk assessments and 72Ds and operational risk database visits. Not only will this aim to improve the quality of risk information we hold, but will in turn free up time of our fire safety regulation team. We'll also continue to roll out new equipment. So the example we've just recently had is the fire hoods, which offer the members of the public up to 15 minutes protection from toxic smoke while being rescued from buildings. We can offer people the hoods to be rescued, and it can be really beneficial, especially for people, maybe the elderly or people who are in wheelchairs. It might take longer to rescue. If the time duration of one hood elapses, we can then just replace them with another hood, so we can continue to protect the people, and they're carried on all our frontline appliances. Another one of the things we've started to see real benefits from is our drone trial, which has been taking place since September. We mobilise the drone team on every available opportunity. We have 2 different drones in place at the moment. Not only do they give the incident commander far better situational awareness of the incident, but they can be used across a wide-scale range of opportunities, not just fires. For instance, urban search and rescue situations, maybe collapsed buildings where we can get an overview, or where we have things like water rescue, where you can't have an immediate overview of it, and we can get the drones up, get them over the water, have a look. They've got a thermal imaging capability to be able to identify people in water, and we can also use the thermal imaging capability for fires. They were used very successfully recently to reduce risk and also to reduce congestion and problems with the local community when we thought there was a cylinder involved in a fire in a school that was under refurbishment. We'd had reports that the cylinder was on fire on top of the building, and we put the necessary exclusion zone in by launching the drone and being able to look at the aerial footage. We soon identified, in fact, it wasn't a cylinder, it was a water extinguisher of very similar shape and size, so we could reduce the restriction zone and put in more proactive firefighting measures. Not only does that enable us to fight fires earlier and to protect buildings, but it also means it minimises disruption from things like 200-metre exclusion zones had it been a cylinder on the roof. Also, another aspect we are dealing with, of course, is looking into the situation in control, specifically around training, around how we handle volume of calls in control, when we have situations where we have large numbers of calls coming in. We've got a new training package that has been launched for our control staff, which we're going through at the moment. And we're also trialling various different options to ensure that exchanging information, not only between control and the fireground, but between our control room and other control rooms around the country, should there be the situation where controls are being taken by other rooms, so that we can ensure that information is being exchanged, and particularly in situations where we've got large numbers of fire survival guidance calls. A lot more of this evidence will be available in detail in the closing statement to phase 1 of the inquiry, which will be in the very early part of next week. Our thoughts, especially from the hundreds of staff who were part of the response on the Knightwood Tower, will always remain with those who died and of their families and those people who lost their homes. I cannot stress enough my personal commitment and that of London Fire Brigade to continuous improvement and learning from major incidents such as the fire at Grenfell Tower. And of course, we will continue to work with building owners and local authorities across London to make sure the right interim measures are in place where cladding is on buildings to keep people safe. And as I said in February, what remains of crucial importance is we grasp this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to improve building regulation and fire safety. And my teams are working closely with Dame Judith Hackett on the fundamental changes to building regulation and especially improving skill in the sector. We continue to call for life-saving sprinklers, including retrofitting residential blocks. I'm pleased to say we have carried out a successful recruitment campaign this year, but we need to do more to reflect London's communities amongst my firefighters. And one of the things I think definitely helps with that is opening the big red doors of London fire stations up and inviting the community in. We had a very successful year last year, not only of open days, and I'm really pleased to report open days I attended, where we had outreach occasions occurring as well, where volunteer firefighters, members of our underrepresented groups were there actively talking to the community about being a firefighter, and we had a really positive uptake from local people who want to be local firefighters. And also we're holding 18 community Christmas events this week and next week across London fire stations to bring in socially isolated and vulnerable people, inviting them into the fire station to eat with us so we can identify them, so we can help protect them and keep them safe. A lot of this work we're doing with our existing resources and teams. Others inevitably might bring new financial pressures. And even without these resourcing pressures, the brigade incurs significant cost in maintaining its current capabilities. Our total spend on fleet is forecast to be £57 million over the next 4 years. We've got £14 million earmarked for a training centre and £5 million for the new Plumstead fire station development. Obviously, the Mayor's budget provides us an increase of £20 million funding for the brigade over the next 4 years. In addition, we're using our budget flexibility reserve to manage those priorities with a total draw of £19.6 million by 2021. In the years after, there are more potential pressures, such as pension contributions, and these are subject to major uncertainties, and we have a government spending review next year as well. The short answer is we have the budget we need now for our priorities, but in the future we do have some gaps to make up with some questions about how we will be able to do that.
Well, thanks for that comprehensive answer, Commissioner. The consequences of Grenfell led to your submission to the Mayor seeking additional £6.2 million capital and £5.8 million revenue funding, which the Mayor agreed to fund as the Conservative government refused to help. How much of that is featured in next year's budget and how much is being pushed forward to future years, as some of the equipment, for example, the extended duration BA and the taller turntable ladders will take some time to procure. The fire safety inspection officers need to be recruited and trained. Bearing in mind your extra funding bid was in the immediate aftermath of the fire, what additional funding demands has experience in your high-rise task force shown to be necessary since then, for example, in greater numbers of inspections and fire safety visits, public reassurance, advice and guidance and operational training? I understand, for example, that the Grenfell Tower investigation and review team of 30 personnel is currently funded from reserves.
Yeah, and as you've given a very comprehensive list there, you know, there are a number of factors involved in the money we asked for. Obviously, a lot of the equipment is subject to procurement processes, and not just the procurement, but the actual development and building. For example, the extended height aerial ladders, you know, take a very long time to actually design and build. We're hoping to see the first one of those appear before the end of next year. What we've actually got now is the budget will reflect the actual pattern of our spending. Some of that will be subject to moving depending on things like procurement of items of equipment. The fire safety inspecting officers, as you made reference to, obviously we can't buy those off the shelf. I'm very pleased to say that we're introducing a new apprenticeship scheme for fire safety officers, which will allow us to make use of apprentices as well. And what we're also trying to do is look at how we work differently in fire safety amongst our teams. And recognising the work that we can devolve to fire stations to actually free up the subject matter experts to be doing the specific fire safety work. So I think that it will be a changing pattern. We have an amount of it set aside for next year. Some of it will roll forward into future years as and when we recognise the spending. I also think that unfortunately the cost of the Grenfell Tower, my own internal team, you know, that is a very big team, but it's a massive request. The amount of work we're already having to do for phase 2, the amount of information we're providing, the amount of, you know, Rule 9 statements that we're currently completing, and all that additional work does mean that not only is the team focusing on the internal inquiry itself, but servicing the needs of the investigation and, of course, the police inquiry.